Welcome back to Simplifying the State, the podcast where we break down politics so you don't have to unpack all the Supreme Court rulings and issues on the last day before its break, like it's a high schooler feverishly submitting an essay 1 minute before it's due. As always, I'm Adam Watson.
And I'm Nicholas Perrin.
So, Nicholas, what do James Carville, David Plouffe, and Jen O'Malley Dillon all have in common?
Are they all humans that I am not aware of?
Well, yeah, that's correct, but the answer I was looking for was they are all top Democrat strategists or they are all top Democrat campaign managers. And that kind of brings us to what we're going to be talking about today, which is what path forward the Democrats might take, both as a party and then also kind of where it could lead them for their candidate for 2028. So the main reason we're talking about this today on this episode specifically was there was a pretty interesting election in New York. That was the New York Mayor Democrat primary, where Zorhan Mamdani beat, who is a member of the Socialist Democrats. He were Democratic Socialists, so he beat former governor and established Democrat old guard Andrew Cuomo. And it was a pretty big upset because in February, polls had Mamdani at about 2% in the polls compared to Cuomo's like 30%. And so to get there in February to June winning the election is pretty remarkable in and of itself, especially given kind of the challenges he had to face from the Cuomo campaign, especially surrounding the $50 million he raised via PACs, the endorsements from other old guard Democrats, et cetera, having much higher name ID than Mamdani. So he campaigned really heavily on affordability and making New York more affordable, seems to be what won him the election. A couple particular issues were freezing rent for a bunch of New Yorkers, improving public transit and making it more affordable, just general affordability things. So, Nicholas, I want to get your reaction to Mamdani winning the election. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, it was pretty surprising for me, especially by such a wide margin. But I guess it goes to show how tired people are of the Democratic electorate, given this and also Harris's performance in the 2024 election.
Right, yeah. So there was a poll done where it ranked a bunch of different Democratic politicians as well as the Democratic Party as a whole. And Bernie Sanders was the highest ranked on that poll. And it wasn't specifically because of his leftist policy positions. In fact, that was the main reason people who said they had a negative opinion of him said they had a negative opinion of him. But the main reasons people had a positive view on him were two things. The first one was his consistency. He's had very consistent views throughout his entire political career, which is somewhat rare for people in Washington. Sure, there's the odd kind of changing of the mind, but usually they, as a herd, tend to move with whatever is popular. But people like that he has stayed consistent. And then the second reason was that they saw him as being very anti-establishment and very outsider compared to other Democrats, which I think is a tool that could serve them very, very well in the 2028 election if they manage to utilize it correctly. I mean, in 2016 and in 2024, Donald Trump ran as an outsider, and he did it with success, more so in 24 than he did in 20, I mean, not 2020, 2016. But yeah, I think that if they use it correctly, the Democrats utilizing that could be very effective. I also think they could learn some things from Mamdani's campaign. Although first I want to preference that by saying what works in New York does not necessarily work nationwide policy-wise. So I think they'll have to wait and get a little bit more information about where the country seems to be at in terms of what policies they want to present. But the things that they can learn from the Mamdani campaign is one, presenting a younger candidate, one that's more outsider, one that's more energetic, one that can get that organic momentum going in a campaign. He utilized a very man of the city, man of the people type campaign. He was constantly out on the street talking to people, campaigning, and I think that that's something that Democrats could utilize in the next campaign. Obviously, it's much different in a municipal election like this one than it is for a statewide election or a national election. But I think learning some things from what they did and taking that into whatever election they go to could be beneficial. What do you think, Nicholas?
I mean, yeah, I think that using his economic policies and cultural policies isn't a great idea nationwide, but I think mostly his campaigning strategy and appealing towards the young population is what won him the election and has a better chance of working nationwide than, his democratic socialism.
Right. So, yeah, obviously, democratic socialism is probably more popular in New York than it is in Montana, probably. But yeah, basically
No
that.
way. No,
Yeah, I know.
no.
I
Bigfoot
don't.
really likes democratic socialism. Trust me, I
Yeah, I
talked
think
to him.
they're big fans of democratic socialism in Billings. Um,
Yeah.
all right. So in terms of candidates they could run, there are a couple sects of the area that they could run. So you have the more centrist candidates, and then you have the more left-leaning candidates, and then you have a sort of in between, and that's kind of what um, this whole episode is about, kind of what strategy in terms of what candidate the Democrats might run. So there was some polling done. Obviously, polling, as we saw in the 2024 election, is not super accurate. It showed a uh, dead heat between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and obviously it was not super close. Well, I mean, it was kind of close, but it was not as close as the polls had suggested. So there are two sets of polls done. The first one is assuming Harris runs. The second one was done assuming without Harris. We're going to be talking about the one without Harris, as I'm not sure it would be a great idea for the Democrats to run Harris in 2028 simply because of a couple reasons. The first one is that she has a lot of baggage as being part of the Biden administration, which people are not very keen on right now. Possibly down the line, they maybe look upon it more favorably, but at the moment, it is not very favorable administration. And the second reason is there's a lot of negative name ID associated with her and the 2024 election defeat. So that are a couple reasons. It might not go well. Plus, I mean, she ran, and people did not elect her. So I'm not sure it would be a great idea to try to run again. But who knows? We'll have to see what the primary brings us. So, excluding Harris, there are a couple front runners. So, the three main ones are Pete Buttigieg, AOC, and Cory Booker. And those are kind of the three I want to talk about because they kind of represent the three different areas of that political spectrograph in terms of the center, the left, and then the in between. So the first one is Pete Buttigieg, and he falls in the in between, and he is the front runner in terms of the polls. And I also think he would be the front runner in a general election for a couple reasons. The first one is that he is one of the party's best communicators. He's gone on Fox News several times, and he has been able to communicate the point he's trying to make to where people on the other side of the aisle do not immediately shut him out, but also maintaining his beliefs and values when communicating that. He's also not too centrist for some of the more liberal leaning parts of the party, but also not too liberal for some of the more centrist parts of the party when it comes to the primary. And then also when it comes to the general, being from the Midwest, being a veteran, he might then be able to bring over some of the more flip flopping voters, the people who voted for Trump in 2016, Biden 2020, and Trump in 2024. So he might be able to bring those and he does have a little bit of baggage, which is he was part of the Biden administration, but he was transportation secretary. So I think he might be able to shake that association with the administration. In terms of social concerns, there is some concern that because he's a gay man, that could hurt him when it comes to Republicans who might be open to voting for a Democrat, but I'm not really sure that would hurt him as much as people think it would. Nicholas, what do you think of Buttigieg just kind of as a candidate?
Out of most of the potential Democratic candidates, I would say he's one of, if not the best for the Democratic Party as a whole. Because yeah, as you said, he'll if he becomes the most popular among the American electorate, then I feel like he'll get the support of all of the party. And his social issues and baggage from the Biden administration, in my opinion, probably wouldn't affect him too much. I mean, obviously, there is a lot of contention over gay people, especially nowadays, but I feel like, yeah, I don't think it would be as much of an issue as people tend to suggest.
Right. So then the other two front runners are AOC and then Cory Booker. AOC, Cory Booker are about tied with 14%. I'm not sure AOC is the best decision for a few reasons. The first one is that I think nationally it would be hard to sell her given her uh, more liberal tendencies, especially to the more centrist group wing of the party. Plus, it might be pretty difficult to win over the Trump voters if we were to run her. Also, it's pretty hard to make the jump from the House of Representatives to the presidency. So I think there is a sort of lack of experience in terms of going to the presidency from where she is right now. And then there's Cory Booker. He is more to the center of the political spectrum. He's gotten a lot of name ID thanks to his filibuster speech, which was the longest one ever given. So that put him on the map in terms of name ID. But he tried to run in 2020. It didn't go well. I'm not sure it would go any better this time, maybe because of the higher name ID, but who knows? And then the other people on the who get above like 3% are Gavin Newsom, Tim Walz, Josh Shapiro, and Gretchen Whitmer. I think Shapiro has some issues, which is he might be a little too to the center for a lot of younger and more liberal voters. Tim Walz, I think, some of the same issues as Harris, association with the failed run in 2024. Gavin Newsom, he might have some issues with uh, quite frankly, he might have some issues with the more liberal wing of the party plus the centrist wing of the party. So he's got a whole thing where liberals in the Democratic Party think he is not liberal enough, and then centrists think he is too California crazy or something along those lines. I'm not sure if that's the exact wording, but stuff like that. So I'm not sure how well he would fare. And then Gretchen Whitmer, maybe Michigan and all that, but I think she's also more to the center, which might be an issue with more liberal leaning parts of the party, but I could see her as another potential front runner. One name that's not on here that I would want to add is possibly John Ossoff. I'm not sure if he plans on running, but I think at some point down the line he maybe should, simply because I've listened to his speeches and he is a very good speech giver. I don't want to say he is, I mean, he might be on par with Obama, even in terms of his charisma and speeches. He might just be a little bit short of that, but uh, he's very good at communicating and giving a very good speech. He might try. I think he might stay where he is in the Senate, possibly then run for governor of Georgia. Who knows? But yeah, we'd have to see. Nicholas, what do you think about the breakdown of all those candidates?
Yeah, based on all of them, I mean, none of them seem like great options in one way or another. They have their drawbacks, and I mean, some of the time, like, I guess it depends on your perspective, but I think a lot of the time those can outweigh the positives of anyone, and especially for a lot of the lesser known, like Democrats, even if they are like a good option, they just don't have the recognition, and so people wouldn't vote for them because they wouldn't know who that person is. And I'm not sure how much like John Ossoff is known, but I mean, if he's an Obama-like figure, I think that's about what the Democrats need right now. So I mean, that would be a good option if the Democrats are able to put their weight behind him or someone similar.
Right. I'm not sure he is an Obama like figure in terms of his charisma and his ability to connect with voters. I think there are kind of once in a generation politicians. You have your Teddy Roosevelts, your Franklin Roosevelts, your Barack Obamas, people like that who just have a real ability to connect with voters and a real charisma and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say he is exactly like Obama, but I do think he and Pete Buttigieg are kind of on par. John Ossoff and Pete Buttigieg are kind of on par when it comes to communication. But yeah, in terms of candidates, that's kind of what there is. I think in terms of policy, I think the Democrats will probably wait to see how this year's elections, the main one being in Virginia, to try to break up the trifecta in the Virginia State Assembly plus the governorship. The Republicans control all three there. The Democrats are going to try to win back the governorship this election, so I think they might wait for that, and then plus the midterms in 2026 to kind of decide on what policies work best. As we've said a lot on this podcast, the electorate in a midterm election is very different from that of a presidential election. So what works in that group might not work in the other, but we'll have to see. But I really think Pete Buttigieg is going to try to run, and I think he would probably be the Democrats' best option. That is, and I think he's going to run for a couple of reasons. The first one is that there is going to be an open governor seat and an open Senate seat in Michigan, which he could probably win. But he has declined to run in those races, which suggests he might be setting up a presidential run. He's also been doing some podcasts and talk shows and going on those, and then he's also taking a couple trips to Iowa, so that could kind of be him setting himself up. One podcast, though, he has failed to come on is Simplifying the State. I personally think that the reason Harris lost the election was because she did not come on Simplifying the State. I think she could have won all 50 states if she had come on here, or Donald Trump could have won all 50 states if he had come on this podcast. I think we have a lot of sway with, quite frankly, every voter in the country, but, that's just my opinion.
I mean, I think we have the best political analyses. Like, I mean, they need us, so like, they
We
just
need
don't want us.
we need to be running both the DNC and the RNC.
I
We
know.
just run it so perfectly that both candidates would get 100%, and then no one would know what to do because we did such a fantastic job. But anyway, yeah, moving on. Nicholas, do you have anything else you want to add kind of about the Democrats' chances in 20, not chances in 2028, but the path they might take?
I mean, it's pretty up in the air right now, but based on how people are like, based on the current popularity of certain politicians, I think it's pretty unlikely that they would shift more towards the center. I mean, it's still possible, but like, I mean, just because of the current popularity of politicians like AOC and Bernie Sanders, whether that's for their political ideology or for, putting themselves out there, yeah, I just find it unlikely that they'll try to stay pretty establishment.
Right, I think their best chance would be running a young anti establishment candidate because clearly people are not satisfied or not happy with the institutions in this country and how they are currently run. I think the both political and economic institutions in this country are fairly toxic, and I think people are not happy with them. And I think running as a party of maintaining the status quo and maintaining the institutions that people do not like, the majority of people do not want, will not do them favors. So I think the Democrats should shift heavily, not maybe heavily, but more to the left in terms of their economic agenda, become more populist with their economic agenda, and try to get more of the working class and the middle class voters, bring them back into the fold and become more of the party of the working class and become less of the party of maintaining the institutions that people do not like and do not want. And I think that would probably serve them well and probably getting rid of more of the old guard in terms of running and bringing in more younger, more outsider candidates would probably benefit them. So, real quick though, before we go, quick footnote here in terms of what is happening in Iran. So, I recorded a short episode on Saturday, kind of breaking down what happened in terms of the US strikes on Iran. Since then, Iran has retaliated with some strikes on US bases. All the missiles were intercepted. Iran also did warn the host countries of our bases ahead of time that they were going to do this, which allowed for the bases to be evacuated and the missile system and the interception systems to be activated and on alert. This was probably something that they did to both save face and then also kind of ramp down tensions. Since then, Trump also announced a ceasefire between the two, but It seems like it was going to be broken after Israel and Iran traded strikes during the time the ceasefire was supposed to be in place. Iran said they had not agreed to a ceasefire, but that they would honor the terms of it if Israel did. And then Israel said Iran attacked them, and then they responded. Iran said they didn't. It's like a whole thing. So tit for tat responses between the two. But as of now, the ceasefire seems to be holding, although it is temporary. In terms of the damage done to their nuclear program, there are conflicting reports. The White House says, specifically President Trump especially, has said that we completely obliterated their nuclear program. Those are his words, obliterated. Um, Leaks from the Pentagon suggest that we only set their nuclear program back 3 to 6 months. Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency, looks like they're still gathering information. Israel hasn't said what the intel is telling them. They said they're going to wait for more information before making a claim about what has happened. I think one of the reasons U.S. presidents before have not struck Iranian nuclear facilities is because unless you get all of it, then they can rebuild and they can just take it so far underground they would never find it. Not in terms of like burying it really far underground, in terms of keeping it so secret, but then also burying it super far underground that the bombs we have could not get to it. So that's why most of them preferred diplomacy, Obama with his nuclear deal over military strikes. But we'll have to see if these strikes were effective. Nicholas, do you have anything else you want to add on the Iran situation?
I mean, yeah, like, I don't think continuing to strike Iran is a good idea because of the reasons you just mentioned. Like, the ceasefire currently in between Iran and Israel probably won't last if we look at history. And, I mean, maybe Trump could strike a deal between the two with some heavy pressure on, I guess, both countries. I'm not sure how much leverage he has on Iran, really. But, yeah, we'll see.
All right. Thanks for listening to Simplifying the State. We will be back next week for our episode. It will be about kind of what the future for the Republicans in terms of 2028 might look like post Trump, or possibly if Trump decides to run again, although he legally can't unless there's a big constitutional amendment, which is unlikely. But anyway, it'll mostly just be looking on what the Republicans might do post Trump. If you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure to rate it. If you, wherever you are listening to this, make sure to follow it on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we will be posting short videos anytime there is major breaking news that we think can't wait until the next episode, which, given the whole state of the world right now, is most likely going to be every week at this point. Yeah, we will see you next time.